What's up guys? My name is Andrew and I'm an application developer here at Crema. Today we are going to take a deeper dive into Flutter. Now you may have seen a video we put out a few months back and it was kind of a high level overview of Flutter versus React and our initial thoughts on the two. I've been in Flutter for now the last 8 months or so, maybe a little bit longer, and still really loving it, but wanted to run through some of my learns and just kind of high level thoughts around some of its capabilities. So let's jump in here. Now, the first thing that I've learned, and you may have heard it said, but it's very, very much true, is in Flutter, everything is a widget. When they say everything, they mean everything. Now, this could include anything from containers to rows to columns, stacks. You've got all that base stuff for layouts, but then it gets into some more interesting things. You've got list tiles, you've got list builders, and you've got things like slivers, which are really, really amazing. It may not seem like much, but let's take a look at it for a second. So list tile, I'm sure if you're familiar with Flutter at all, you absolutely know what this is. You've got a place for a leading, probably an icon, a little avatar. You have a title, and then you have a subtitle, and you have some kind of trailing here. Now, if we're thinking about how we would build this without a list tile, we'd have a row, we'd have a column, we'd have some kind of container here, we'd have another container here. This would have to be an expanded. There's a lot that goes into this, and it's cool because you get this just right out of the box. That's a pretty simple example, but if we look at what's going on here with this interaction on the header, this is where it starts to get pretty interesting with some of the things like slivers, which Flutter gives you. So we've got a header up here at the top. Inside that header, we have a flexible space that's expandable to whatever height you want to give it. You can set a lot of different properties on that. Is it floating? Is it pinned? What's the animation? Is parallax? And then there's this down here, this little tab bar. And as you can see, it sticks to the header and then everything it goes below it really, really nicely. It's a super slick animation, super slick interaction in general, and was kind of a nightmare to figure out when I was trying to do it initially. But the cool thing is that that's actually just all a widget. So you've got your slivers set up here on a sliver app bar, and it goes down into some flexible space bar, and then I have a background greeting because I want those to be parallaxed against each other. And then there's the sliver persistent header. Now that's really doing a lot of the meat of the work with keeping that tab bar stuck to the top there. And then you just define the tab bar, tabs, and you're good to go. So that's some of the things like if you find yourself getting into Flutter and one of the big complaints that you hear from people is, man, you just have all these nested widgets, like widgets on widgets on widgets. And it's like getting into prop hell if you were in React or something like that. I found if I ever start getting into that place, there's probably a widget made for it already, and I probably just need to do a little bit more research and figure out a best practice for it. And that's where a lot of that gets into, helping you out. Now, there are some downsides to this that I've found too. I would say 90% of all these widgets, they're really, really well thought out. They're all to material spec, which can be good or bad for your app, but some of the things are hard-coded. Tab bars really want to behave as tab bars. Tabs within a tab bar really want to behave as a material tab. And so trying to build something as seemingly simple as this little pill box here, instead of just having a typical title with an indicator and maybe even icon, the tab bar does not want to do that. And tabs definitely don't want to do that. And so there's some finagling that goes into that. Since it's all right here, you can, if you're in VS Code like I am and on Mac, you can command click and that will actually open up the source code so you can jump into it and look through everything right there to understand kind of a little bit more of what's going on, which can be really super helpful if you are having trouble styling something or just wanting to know actually what's happening behind the scenes there. I found that to be super, super useful. Some other widgets that I found have been really cool. There's date time pickers that are standard. So if I click on this, we get this really cool date picker, and then we've also got a time picker. This one, it looks really nice. It functions a little bit strangely at times and is really difficult to style, but it's there for free, which I really like. Again, material design, so everything is laid out really beautifully, but to style it, some of these things are hard-coded, which is not optimal, and I'm not exactly sure why that is. And so you have to kind of finesse your way through getting into that stuff. But on the whole, you get so much out of the box with Flutter and so many just base interactions that it is totally worth it. And for me, it's sped up my development time so much. The other thing that people talk about a lot with Flutter is state management and how to do state management well. There's a few different options. I start out with the block pattern, which is really consistent. It's really nice. Then I've moved on now to provider, but you can use Redux. There's a bunch more ways to accomplish this. And they all have their benefits. I'm sure they all have their cons too, but we're gonna take a look at provider and just see kind of what that offers you and what the problems are that it's solving. If you jump into Flutter and just do Flutter create, you get this very standard little app where it counts the numbers. Hooray, that's very fun. What we're gonna do is build something similar, but we're going to just use that base and try provider. So let's get rid of all this code because we don't need it. Boom, you're gone. And what we're going to do is we're going to set up an app that lets you invite your friends to a party maybe. Yeah, you got friends, you wanna have a party? So we're gonna set up 2 screens where it lets you have a list of your friends and you can add them to a party and see the list of people coming to your party. So what I've done, just real high level here, we've got a list of friends, and friend is just a class with a name and an email, both are strings. We've got a scaffold with a list, and that list is just the friends, and on tap, we'll get to this, that's pretty fun. And so what we're going to do, another great thing that Flutter has, and I think we touched on in the other video too, is its navigation is native, which is huge. I've got my app, stateless widget here in the build method. We've got the material app, and then within that you can just declare routes. And so I've already set up a invited screen. So it's a separate screen here. And I just declare that as one of my routes. This is gonna be how I call it. And I'm passing it the context of the rest of the app. And then I'm serving up this invited screen. So what that looks like then to actually navigate to, I'm going to have this floating button here. Let's reload the app and I'll show you what that looks like. I've got my list of people and I've got this navigation here to this separate screen. And all I'm having to do is on press, I'm calling navigator.of, passing the context, doing push name, and then passing that invited. Super simple, didn't have to do hardly any setup whatsoever, and it came for free. Now the next thing we want to set up is state management. Now what we could do, and what is actually happening, what was happening before, is this used to be a stateful widget, and it was keeping track of the numbers counted just within the widget itself. Now that's fine, like if you don't need to pass that information back and forth to really any other widgets, but if you need to pass it down to a separate widget, or it needs to be more of a global variable, you'll be passing widgets or passing props all day, and it just will be a terrible place to be. So we've gotten rid of the stateful widget and just have a stateless one now. And what we need to do is set up our provider. Now, package provider is the third party, but it's really just gonna be syntactic sugar for inherited widgets. It's really not doing a whole lot of magic, but it's just giving you some hooks to be able to do things a little bit faster. So what we're gonna do is we're going to, in our main, and yes, usually these would be separated out, but in main under run app, just do change notifier provider, and we're going to declare builder, pass the context, and then this little guy here, we've got a folder with providers, and this provider is gonna look like this. It's gonna extend change notifier, which is native to Flutter, and it's gonna set up the streams that we need to get a hold of. So we can have a list of invited people here. We go down, we create an unmodifiable list. That's how we're going to list out our people that we invited. If we want to know the number of people we've invited, we can set up a little function for that. And then of course we want to add and remove people from the invited list. Now to do this, we're just going to add it to that stream, but then we're also going to pop this little function in, notify listeners. And that's gonna tell any of the functions that are consuming this list that an update has occurred. Kind of like set state or anything that lets everybody else know what's going on. So we've got that set up, so we will load that in there. So now this is at the root of our app, and everything below that in the tree has access to whatever actually gets put into the invited. This works for this app because we only have one piece of state we're trying to keep track of, but there is multi-provider, which you probably are gonna wanna use if you have any more state that you're keeping track of. But this is a very simple app, so we don't need it. So that looks like this. So down below here now, what I can do is I can grab that provider here with provider.of, I'm passing in invites, passing the context, and I have this essentially is that whole provider. So if I call invites.add and add whatever this on tap, essentially if I click on Mary here, that has added her to the list. And I know that because in my separate screen, my invited screen, I've imported, I'm using consumer, and that's another thing that provider gives you. I'm consuming the invites, and that gives me the context of the whole route, and then that gives me invites again, and then if I want to declare a child on that for the list, I can. But then I can just call invites.invited, that list that we've created from anybody we've added, and just list them out the same way we did on our home screen there. And if we look, boom, there it is. It's so exciting. Whoa, we have another person on that list. And over here, we wanted to see maybe the total number. Since we can update in both places, we're just going to call invites number of friends invited, and that'll just return the length of that, just giving us how many people have been invited. So that may seem really trivial in a way, but this is a really, really simple way to get all of this state passed around with very little code. And it's updating both places. It's super seamless. I've been using this now for a few months. It's super fast and can handle a lot of data all at once, which is really nice. The other thing that's really cool, List View Builder, I know we don't have that many things in this, but I'll just touch on this. It's not to do with state, but it is lazy loading. So you can have hundreds and thousands of records that are passing it through, but this will actually be lazy loaded automatically for you. Another huge, huge benefit. But that is provider, and that is the way it works. Now, how does this differ from the block pattern? It honestly is essentially almost the same thing. There's a little bit more boiler code that goes into the block pattern, and you have to kind of initiate your provider a little bit differently. So if we look at provider, if you're using the block pattern, you set up and declare your own provider here, and then you go in later and set it up, or you set it up very similarly within your app. I've got all these routes too, but you pass the provider, you pass the context. It's a little bit more boilerplate code too within the block itself, but all in all, they're very, very similar. The way that things are consumed is a little bit differently too. You'd set up a stream builder with the block and consume it that way instead of just having your consumer at invites or whatever you're doing. But if you want to invite people to your party, this is the way to do it. So those are kind of the cool things that I've been finding. I mean, there's so much to Flutter. Everything's a widget, state management, it's all a little bit differently. Object-oriented program isn't what I was like totally into before, but I really, really enjoy it now, coming from a React and React Native background. You know, did the video on will Flutter kill React Native? I don't think anything is gonna kill React Native necessarily. It's used so much within the industry, but for me, I do prefer using Flutter, just speed of development, what you get out of the box. 90% of its customability is just really, really good there. But I mean, React Native has a strong community around it too, but really into a lot of things working with Flutter. And as far as support goes, I've seen a lot of the community start to build back up. It is run by Google, which I mean, good or bad, like we'll see. We'll see if it continues. Google likes to kill things, so I'm hoping they won't because I'm writing apps in it, so please don't. Please don't, Google. Yeah, that's about it. There's so much more with Flutter. You've got isolates. Something I'm gonna be working on next is probably Flare and that kind of integration. We just heard this morning that there's something new coming out called Interact in 120 hours. If you didn't hear about that, you just did, but we'll see what that is. Maybe it's Flare integration, interactions. Maybe it's something else. None can say. Well, that's about all I've got for you. Let us know what you guys think. I mean, do you want to see another Flutter video? Would it be helpful to see more live coding? We love doing stuff like that, build an app all together, some tutorials. Let us know what you think about Flutter. What are your favorite things? What are your least favorite things? What are the things that you're excited for the future? Put it down in the comments. Make sure to like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.